You're listening to The Hard Truth with John Deaton. John Deaton is a Marine veteran, lawyer, and best-selling author who stared down poverty, survived street violence, and beat cancer to fight another day. From the streets to the courtroom, Deaton has taken on corporate greed and fought against government fraud and overreach. Always for the little guy, a proud father of 3 girls, Deaton brings you the raw, unfiltered truth that hits hard and holds nothing back. Join us as we dive into his journey, his vision, and what he hopes to bring to the people of Massachusetts.
Don't you touch that dial. You're listening to The Hard Truth with John Deaton. Good evening, everybody. I got a great show planned for today. I have Diana DiZoglio, who is the state auditor here in the Commonwealth, and she has been trying to implement and execute your demand for the legislature to be audited. Where's your taxpayer dollars going? She's in a fight of her life. She's fighting for you and she's fighting for me. Can't wait to get into that interview. Let's go. I have a special guest, someone who I've described as a rock star in Massachusetts politics. And I say that, and she actually has a D in front of her name as a Democrat, not a Republican. But I'm someone, as you know, who supports the best candidate. Sometimes that's a Republican, sometimes that's a Democrat. I have the state auditor, Diana DiZoglio. How are you, Diana?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks so much for the gracious invitation to join you here today and for the encouragement with some of the work that we've been doing in my office. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat a bit.
Well, listen, it's something, we live in Massachusetts, and it's not too often an issue comes around that 72% or above 70% of all voters agree upon, whether they're a Republican or independent or a Democrat. And auditing the state legislature, seeing where taxpayer funds and how they're being spent is sort of a unifying theme, I think, of all voters. And if you could just describe who you are for the audience and what you do and why you're on this mission that I support and 72% of all voters support.
Yeah, look, I served in the state legislature for 10 years. I was a state representative for 6 years, and a state senator for 4 years, and I represented portions of the Merrimack Valley, from the Methuen-Lawrence area all the way up to Newburyport, and subsequently ended up running for state auditor. And John, one of the things that people questioned me on when I was running for state auditor, one of the things I got the most questions about was whether or not, if I was elected to the position of state auditor, if I would actually audit the legislature. This wasn't an idea that I came up with personally. I think a lot of folks think that I just sort of, was thinking about it one day and just came up with an audit of the legislature. But I actually have to give credit where credit is due, and that is to you, the residents of Massachusetts, who brought it to my attention consistently and asked me repeatedly when I was on the campaign trail, if you voted for me, would I audit the state legislature? And I made that commitment during that campaign. Subsequently, when I got elected, and at the end of 2022, and then started in the position of state auditor at the beginning of 2023, I moved forward to fulfill that commitment to the voters who requested that I conduct that audit, only to be stymied by legislative leaders, namely the Speaker and the Senate President, who refused to comply with an audit of the state legislature and said that they believed it was unconstitutional for an audit of how our taxpayer dollars are being spent in the legislature to be conducted. I took this matter to the Attorney General's office, but the Attorney General stood up for the Speaker and the Senate President against the audit and said that she didn't believe that the Speaker and Senate President should have to comply with the audit of the state legislature that we were seeking to conduct. So I subsequently worked with some advocates across, all political spectrums, as we're talking about right now. You're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. I worked with Democrats from my own party. I worked with unenrolleds, Green Rainbow people, Workers' Party, independents, and everybody in between, alongside, yes, Republicans, who all came together to stand up for good government and get the issue of auditing the legislature on the ballot by helping to collect over 100,000 signatures so that we could all vote on this very nonpartisan issue. We might disagree on how money is being spent, but what we all agree on is that we want to know how the money is being spent, right? So that we can make informed decisions. And frankly, so that we can have either agreements or disagreements about what we think about it. But we have to know what's going on, even to have disagreements, right, John? So, people came together from all political spectrum, from across the political spectrum, and joined together to get this issue on the ballot. The Attorney General approved this issue going to the ballot and said that it was in its proper form, essentially, by doing so, which means it met constitutional muster, according to the AG's office. And subsequently, after a lot of advocacy, we ended up seeing this pass with 72% of the voting population of Massachusetts saying, yes, they want an audit to be conducted of the state legislature by their independently elected state auditor's office. And we went to go proceed once again to try to conduct this audit, only to once again get told to pound sand, essentially, that the legislative leadership team was not willing to play ball, that they're not willing to comply, and that essentially they think that they're above this 72% voter approved law. Now, John, it's worth saying that we've actually, in the Office of State Auditor, always conducted audits of the state legislature up until only recent years, where a few legislative leaders decided that they were no longer going to comply with the audits that our office conducts of the legislature. And they've gotten away with only in recent years bucking those audits by making ridiculous excuses, claiming that it's unconstitutional, claiming that audits never conducted, gaslighting the general public, essentially, and telling the general public that the over 100 audits that are up on my office's website that signal and prove that audits always were conducted, that they're basically saying that those don't exist, and that we all must be just essentially seeing things, because those audits that say legislative audits, that they're not actually audits that were conducted. They're essentially telling us that compliance with the law is in the eye of the beholder. Actually, they are literally telling taxpayers that. The Speaker of the House very recently came out and said, with respect to the law, and I quote, compliance is in the eye of the beholder. I don't know any of us who are driving around on the streets of Massachusetts who might get pulled over speeding and get to tell the police officer who pulls us over that we believe compliance is in the eye of the beholder. That wouldn't work out too well for us, would it, John? So we have these games being played up at the State House, and we have been doing everything that we can to ensure that the law is enforced, and are currently trying to get access to a court to make sure that this law is enforced and that lawmakers stop breaking the law. But unfortunately, the Attorney General has been unwilling to represent our office in court, and has actually turned around and pointed the finger back at my office and said that it's my office's fault that she will not enforce the law as the Attorney General of Massachusetts, which has been, quite a challenge to address, since, not a lot of people, necessarily know about the inner workings of the auditor's office, but we actually can't, in the auditor's office, force compliance with any of the audits that we conduct. We can take the matter to court. We can try to enforce the law that way, but we are required by law to be represented by the Attorney General's office when an agency or a department refuses to cooperate. So, because the legislature is refusing to cooperate, we have been practically begging the Attorney General to come up with the legal aspects of the argument here to be able to sue them into compliance. She has essentially turned back at our office and said that I should be the one to come up with the legal analysis to take them to court. I have spoken back to her and essentially said, with all due respect, I'm not an attorney. I don't have a law degree. I am the state auditor. I ran to be the state auditor and not the attorney general for a reason, and that's because my skill set aligns with this position and not with the position of attorney general. And the Attorney General's office is the people, they're the people's attorneys. It's their job to help us to come up with a legal strategy and to help enforce the law. I can't imagine that the Attorney General's office, really, uh, really thinks that when people call them for assistance, that they, would expect that people would appreciate them turning back on residents of the Commonwealth every time they got a call. And for those residents to be told that unless they come up with their own legal strategy and unless they can essentially represent themselves, that they're not going to get any assistance from the Attorney General's office, that would kind of make the Attorney General's office really unnecessary, right? So they're there to help enforce the law, but they are refusing to do so right now. And we understand that, maybe the Attorney General feels as though, this is something that she doesn't want to do, or that this creates challenges and headaches for her and for her office. And if that's the case, all we're asking is that the Attorney General allow us to get our own attorney so that we can still go to court. We are asking that she do her job in representing us, but since she's pretty much made it clear that she's unwilling to do so, we do need her to at least allow us to get our own attorney so that we can get access to court. But even then, John, we have seen no such luck. The Attorney General is not granting us permission to get our own attorney. And we do believe that the goal overall at the State House is to keep us from being able to access a court of law so that we can get this matter adjudicated. We do believe that, everything that's happening essentially seems to be meant to keep us out of the courtroom so that the law can continue to be broken and nobody's held accountable for breaking the law.
All right, so let's just recap so the audience fully understands. When you ran for auditor, people wanted you to audit the state legislature, see where our money's going, so then we can have legitimate debates of how that money should be spent. They say no, that it's unconstitutional, and that's the Speaker of the House of the Speaker of the House and the Senate President Karen Spilka. They say it's unconstitutional. You go to the Attorney General, you get it on the ballot. The Attorney General blesses it for the ballot initiative, says it's proper, says it's constitutional. Basically, you then get 72% of the voters who want this audit. You go back to the state legislature, said, listen, the people have spoken. They say no, pound sand. You go back to Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General of Massachusetts, and says, look, they won't do it. I need you to represent me in court. And she says no, even though she originally blessed it. So I have to imagine that your basically summation that they're just trying to prevent this audit and prevent you from having access to the court. So is Andrea Campbell's position, and we're going to talk more specific and we're going to get into after the break a little more in detail, but is it basically saying that you haven't provided a good legal theory? Is that her position? Or is she also saying that all of a sudden it's not constitutional and agreeing with the legislature?
She is alluding to her potential thoughts that some things may be constitutional. Essentially, muddying the waters on this issue publicly before she has stated that lawmakers should follow the law. So essentially, my request has been, look, all we're asking for is financial documents and state contracts. And certainly, Madam Attorney General, we should both be able to agree that that a review of those documents has nothing to do with the inner workings of legislative business. It's not infringing upon their ability to operate as the legislature. It has nothing to do with a separation of powers, which would be only really if our office went in and sat in the position of a legislator and tried to exercise the authority of a legislator. We have no desire to do that. I actually was a legislator for 10 years. Not interested in going back, not interested in exercising the power of a legislator really ever again in that capacity. So we have no interest in exercising the power of the legislature. We have an interest in reviewing financial documents and state contracts to make sure that the law has been being followed and that our taxpayer dollars are being spent appropriately. But the Attorney General is basically saying back to us that she still does not have the information that she needs to be able to enforce the law, even though we have repeatedly told her and her team the scope of the audit. We have said, these are the documents that we want to look for the purposes of this current audit. What she's asking, John, is essentially, and I heard the Attorney General on, I think it was GBH with Jim and Marjorie, and, on that show, I believe, she said something to the effect of her needing to know what any future audit could potentially look at before she's willing to represent our audit and to, our audit in court. And to that, I say, with all due respect, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a psychic. I can't tell the AG or anybody else what some future potential audit might seek to examine. And that's not appropriate. That's not an appropriate question to be asking our office. What could some future potential auditor choose to look at? I can't answer for a future elected official. I also can't answer for what the situation might call for in the future. I can only speak to what we are doing currently and the law that we're trying to currently make sure is enforced and what we're currently trying to examine. And nothing that we are examining could even come close to being viewed as being unconstitutional. And I think
100%.
the Attorney General's office knows that, John. And I think that's why they don't want to allow us to go to court, is because they know very well that nothing about what we're seeking to examine could cross the line of being unconstitutional. So I think that the goal is to keep us out of court. And that's why I'm asking for us to be allowed to get our own attorney.
Okay, when we come, we're going to cut for break, but when we come back, we're going to unpack this. I'm with Diana DiZoglio, the state auditor who's on a mission for the people. The Hard Truth is paid for by the Deaton law firm. I've been representing mesothelioma and lung cancer victims for 23 years across the Commonwealth. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer and were exposed to asbestos, you contact me at the Deaton law firm. That's DeatonLawFirm.com. You can also reach me here at this show at thehardtruthshow.com. That's John at hardtruthshow.com. John at hardtruthshow.com. Welcome back to the show. I'm John Deaton. You're listening to The Hard Truth on iHeart's WRKO, and I am with Diana DiZoglio, the state auditor. Listen, those first segment went by fast. I want to ask you some specific questions. You said that publicly that this whole mission of the audit is about transparency and accountability. Can you give a couple examples of what you're really looking for?
Yes. So essentially, look, people have been fed up with the lack of transparency up on Beacon Hill within the state legislature, specifically due to the fact that the state legislature doesn't have to follow the same laws that they impose on other entities across the Commonwealth. For example, every city and town in the Commonwealth does have to follow the open meeting law. Every city and town in the Commonwealth has to follow the public records law. Folks have recently learned that not only has our legislature been frequently ranked as the least transparent and least accessible state legislature in the entire nation, but that they were also ranked as the least effective state legislature in the entire nation last year or so. So folks are fed up. They want answers. They want access. And they want to know that their taxpayer dollars are being spent appropriately. And just one of the ways that we can make sure that that's happening is through this audit of the state legislature. This is one of many things that needs to happen up on Beacon Hill to help to shine a light on what's going on behind those closed doors. So our office is trying to conduct an audit. We're trying to look at taxpayer dollars, how they're being spent, get access to the receipts, the documents, and the state contracts within the state legislative body. That is being refused to us. And when they refuse access to the state auditor's office, they're refusing access to you, the taxpayer. So we are fighting to make sure that we can get access to those documents so that we can make them public for all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, and I'm just going to offer this. You don't need to respond to it, but I want you to know that and I'm not looking for fees or anything, I will step in and do anything I can, the Deaton Law Firm. I sued the federal government in a writ of mandamus, against the SEC. I think there's a case, Diana, that's ripe to sue Andrea Campbell. Listen, she's got no problem suing. And my audience knows some of them are very disappointed that I'm not a Trump guy. All right. But she's sued 12 times already, the Trump administration. Maybe she should spend a little time on the state that she resides and that she serves and honor the voters and implement that. But, I believe as a lawyer, the next move is to sue the attorney general with a writ of mandamus that says, look, you're not doing your job. So you're asking a judge to force her to either represent you or allow you to seek counsel of your own choosing or the choosing of the people. And so do you think that's a possibility, or you're not in a position to really get into that right now?
I think that most people agree that the AG's office can do more than one thing at a time, right? I think even the AG's office acknowledges that they can do more than one thing at a time. And we are simply saying, look, as you pursue justice on other matters for the residents of the Commonwealth, that you also pursue justice for the residents of the Commonwealth on this very important matter. And, we understand that there are other things going on that the Attorney General might, view as taking precedent. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we should be blocked from getting access to court, which is really what's happening, John. Really, that's what's happening. Okay. So, we understand that, if the Attorney General's office, needs additional information in some cases, that it might, we might not be able to get access to a courtroom immediately. But it's been several months now. There's over 150 pages of communications between my office and the Office of AG. And we can't even get the Attorney General's office to state that they believe that the legislature should follow the law, and that at least financial documents should be made available to the Office of State Auditor while we're looking into some other issues. Those are some really basic things that we would expect the Attorney General's office to be able to admit to, that lawmakers should follow the audit law, that the Attorney General's office stands with the audit law, that they're going to make a commitment to represent the people, that they might just be looking into some details, but that they are going to fully stand with the people, that they are going to bring the legislature to court if they don't comply with the law. But they're not saying that. What they're saying is, well, we are upset with the auditor's office because the auditor's office isn't giving us what we need to be able to do our jobs. And that's just not correct. And I think people see through that. Okay. So, as much as I always appreciate seeing the creative ways that Beacon Hill leaders can come up with to blame my office for their inaction, the reality is that the voters are smarter than that, and they know very well that I am not the attorney for the Commonwealth. I have a psychology and Spanish degree. I try to use it as often as I can to, assist with the work that I do at the State House. But I am not an attorney, and my office's job is to audit, and the AG's office's job is to enforce the law. And if the law is being broken, the only office that can make sure that it starts to get followed is the Office of the Attorney General's office. So if there's anything that the AG needs in order to be able to enforce this law, I've made all of our communications with the AG's office about this matter public so that people can see what she's been asking for, what they still feel they need access to. Because frankly, nothing we say or do is going to be sufficient for the Attorney General in terms of, getting action to be able to allow us to get access to that courtroom. So I'm asking for your assistance, for the assistance of any resident out there who wants to ensure that this gets taken to court. When you go online, search for the 150 pages there of communications between me and the Attorney General, peruse as you see fit, look at some of their questions. And if you can help us to answer the Attorney General, and to get her access to things that she feels she needs access to in order to be able to enforce the law, please send it to the Office of the AG. And hopefully, at bare minimum, hopefully the Attorney General will at least allow us to get our own attorney so that we can bring this matter to court instead of continuing to block our access to court.
Absolutely. Listen, if Andrea Campbell needs it, I'll write the damn brief for her. Say this is what you need to do, and hand it to her on a silver platter for her to do her job. Because I've never would imagine. I got to tell you, it screams corruption to me, and I'm not asking you to say that, but when people fight this hard, you're a Democrat. You're a registered Democrat. You ran as a Democrat. And these Democrats are now attacking you simply because you want to say, hey, the taxpayers deserve to know where their dollars are being spent and how it's being spent. I mean, House Speaker Ronald Mariano and Senate President Karen Spilka have accused you of pursuing a personal audit, they called it, and citing potential conflicts of interest from your time as a legislature. Did you ever envision that you would be attacked for simply trying to implement the will of the people? I'm really fascinated by this, that these lawmakers, fellow Democrats, would literally attack you personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate that legislative leaders have perpetuated this false narrative that there is somehow a conflict of interest with conducting an audit on behalf of the people. Because I used to work somewhere years ago, I don't know how. They were able to manipulate the conversation to be able to get even any press coverage on that particular allegation, but they did. And their goal is to try to undermine my office's work, my office's attempts to do its job on behalf of the tax-paying residents by targeting me individually. Because, frankly, I mean, I'm an easy target for them. I'm the youngest constitutional officer, right? I was the youngest woman serving in the House of Representatives. When I got elected there, when I started in 2013, I was the youngest woman serving in the House. I was the youngest woman serving in the state Senate the entire time I was there, and now I'm your youngest constitutional officer. And this is nothing new for them to patronize, talk down to me, my team, and try to suggest that we just don't know what we're doing, and that this is some personal axe to grind, or that there's some vendetta. Those are statements that are made because they sort of look at me and they think about what's the easiest thing that they can pitch to the people of the Commonwealth and convince them of, right? If they can paint me as, some sort of woman who is on a revenge tour, and they can be successful in that in some regard, that's what they're going to go with, right? Because they're going to do anything they can to get out of following the law. So it has been a challenge, John, to speak about this and to be as assertive on this issue and as consistently determined to get this done. Because I am also battling that narrative that they're pitching to people, which is, oh, she's too aggressive. Oh, she's hell bent. She's just out for revenge. She's this, she's that. They take these personal aspects that they, want to convince their friends and their supporters of, and try to convince them that, that my pursuit of justice on this matter, and that my pursuit of the law simply being followed, that it's somehow wrong, that it's somehow, something that's inconsistent with what the people want. And I keep reminding people, look, you might not like my, personality, you might not want to go and get a beer with me, but guess what? This is the law. It's 72% of the voters of the Commonwealth, Republican and Democrat, came together on an issue, John. That doesn't happen too often these days, right? I mean, we are living in such a politically polarized environment where, when people are speaking to the other side, so to speak, that, it's become very challenging for folks. And this is something that actually brought people together. It didn't divide people. It brought people together. Folks have looked at me and said, well, geez, you're, you seem to be dividing people on this matter. No, actually, I'm bringing people together. I'm bringing people together that are crossing party lines to work together for transparency, accountability, and accessibility to how their tax dollars are being spent. They are willing to look past disagreements on who they voted for, and willing to focus on the issue to make sure that we can make progress, because Beacon Hill is no longer about Republican or Democrat, John. It's about people with power and everybody else. Because we know it's not just the Democrats. We know that there are Republicans who are also in on it.
Absolutely.
And they benefit from the system that is broken up on Beacon Hill. I mean, and they might, for appearance's sake, make it appear as though, they're standing up for the taxpayers in certain regards with a vote here or there to kind of give themselves cover. But they're not really, championing these issues or battling, legislative leaders who are stymieing this audit. So, this is something that it's not about Republican or Democrat. It is about power and the rest of us, people with power and the rest of us. And that's why we need to keep coming together. We need to keep talking about the issue and, not buying into these bogus arguments that the Speaker and Senate President are, trying to, manipulate the electorate with. The electorate is smarter than the way that they're being treated. And, I do believe that voters see through and see past, for the most part, what the Senate President and the Speaker are doing and the way that they were trying to manipulate this conversation.
All right, only got a couple more minutes, but where's the governor? We know where Andrea Campbell is on the issue. We've discussed the Attorney General. Is Maura Healey supportive? Is she's trying to avoid this for political reasons? Has she been as helpful at all of putting pressure, anything?
I think that, I've been disappointed, because I have had a good working relationship with the administration. That doesn't mean that we always agree, obviously.
Right.
If we always agreed, I think that would be problematic, right? So we certainly have areas where we agree, where we'll disagree on things, but we have had a good working relationship with the administration, John. And, I have been disappointed that we haven't seen really any support on this issue. The administration has distanced themselves from this matter. The governor has made comments here or there when asked directly in interviews or on the radio. If she supports this, she has said that she voted for this, which is good, and I appreciate that certainly. I think that it would be incredibly helpful, though, to have the administration, using the bully pulpit that they have to help to challenge the legislature on the fact that they are breaking the law right now. Because if you voted for this, but then the law is being broken,
Right.
I would think that the administration would be just as disappointed as most of us on that front. And I have sought to speak with the governor about this. Haven't been given the opportunity to do so. But if I am granted the opportunity to speak with the governor about this matter, certainly, I will be asking for additional support publicly and for additional pressures to be put on legislative leaders to follow the law.
Okay, I want to respect your time, but I have to ask you one way that you could speak to the governor is by challenging her to become governor yourself. Because I would tell you, Diana, I'm a registered Republican. People know that I've supported Democrats, I've supported independents. Obviously, I'm a Republican. But put up against someone like you, a common sense person of the people, uh, someone who isn't defined by political division or party politics. Is there any thought that someone like you, especially when you see the governor's approval rating, falling under 50%, any challenge? Listen, I've been at events where Republicans are asking you to come switch parties because they support you. And a candidate like you would be formidable. A guy like me would be in a tough spot because I've got friends running for Republican nominee for governor. And I got to tell you, Diana, if they're against Maura Healey, it's a zero, thought process for me. Someone like you, and I'm going to take a pause and be like, wait a minute, I'm not just going to vote because someone's a Republican, and would seriously consider voting for someone like you in a governor's race. Any thoughts? You can take a pass if you want, but I know people like me are out there calling you a rock star, saying do it because we need someone like you.
Look, I I appreciate the vote of confidence, John. I really do. And I said this last week too when I was in another interview that, I do appreciate when people who support the work that we're doing, let me know what they think I could or should be doing. It's thank you. I don't have uh, any. I'm not considering a run for governor at all. I am 100% focused on doing this job. It's a lot tougher, I think, than maybe I've talked about out in on these radio shows and what have you. But uh, it's taken a lot more of a toll on me personally than I really thought that it would. Like, obviously, I think at the professional level, people get it. It's tough at the state house, but also, it's challenging to, it's been challenging to go up to Beacon Hill, even just go to the office and do the job and go to work with people that have really always worked with you, but now they're breaking the law, so now they're avoiding you. Now it's taking longer to get things done. You're trying to navigate the complexities associated with working together with colleagues of yours who you're working on other issues with, but who are upset with you for pushing the audit of the legislature issue because they feel as though, they look bad because they're not following the law, and they're getting calls about this now. um, and the finger, really being pointed back at you and your office for causing this challenge for them. Right now, we know that the voters were clear, and really, if somebody's choosing not to follow the law or choosing not to support this, that really that's their own decision, right? And that they made that decision, and that they could have decided to stand with the law and to stand with the voters, but they didn't. But the way that this is being handled at the State House essentially is, I am persona non grata up there right now. So even on different things that I'm trying to work on that have nothing to do with the legislative audit, it's become really challenging. It's become really challenging. And, it takes a toll. So I am really committed to getting this audit of the legislature done. Uh, but it does take pretty much everything I have to make sure that that's getting done, and that the work of my office is also continuing. We did this audit of the shelter system recently. We've done multiple reports and audits on the MBTA. We've audited the Department of Children and Families. So we have a lot of these larger audits that we've been doing that are really important, that we need to continue to do. And I'm continuing to focus on that work. I'm continuing to focus on making sure that I am staying standing for this audit, and that my office's position is, continuing to be on the side of taxpayers with respect to this and other audits. And it does take all that I have to be able to do that. So I am not considering that. I am just focused on the work at hand.
Well, that just shows you what an honorable person you are, because I believe what you're doing in this audit to be the single most important issue in Massachusetts, because we have elected leaders, who believe they're above the law, who believe they don't have to answer to the voters, who believe they can do whatever they want without any transparency. And there's a lot of people, Diana, in your shoes who would maybe think personal and cash in on sort of what I call your rock star status for their own personal political reasons. But the fact that you were determined to see this through and implement and execute the will of the people just shows you what an honorable person you are. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm out of time. I took you over your limit. I know you're busy. Keep
Thanks,
fighting.
John. I appreciate coming on. It's always great to chat.
Absolutely. Have a great day. That is Diana DiZoglio, the state auditor, out there doing the job of the people. Thank you. Welcome back to The Hard Truth. This is John Deaton. You're listening to WRKO. We're going to get to some emails, and this email is from Greg. Greg from Worcester, who writes, John, why the hell should anyone listen to you? You're a never-Trumper, just another rhino, and there's no difference between you or Ed Markey. Greg, I'm not going to try to change your mind. You have the right to think how you want to think. You have the right to vote how you want to vote. And I've touched on this subject, and I even addressed this in a speech that I'm going to play for the audience. But let me make something clear. If you take the position that because I didn't support President Trump as a candidate and that I'm not a big Trump guy, that means that I'm no different than Ed Markey, then my friend, you're a moron. And that's just the truth. I got to tell you the truth. This show is called The Hard Truth, and the hard truth is that you're likely an idiot because Ed Markey supports the Green New Deal, and he supports all these alternative energy mandates that are crushing working people on their electric bills. They're being charged for solar or wind when they have nothing to do with it. I don't support that. Ed Markey has never supported border security. He wants all these illegals to come here and we just, turn them into citizens and let them vote. I support zero tolerance for illegal immigration. Ed Markey supports biological men competing against women in sports. I got 3 daughters. I don't support that nonsense. So this position that I'm no different than Ed Markey because you view me as a rhino or because you don't like that I didn't vote for your guy, I call it the moron test. That if you feel that way, that I need you to go look in the mirror, and if you see a reflection, you might be a moron. You're part of the problem. Listen, if we don't get a seat at the table, if we only allow the Democrats and the far left radicals to run this state for another 20 years, and no one with common sense who has some conservative principles does not get a seat at the table, then Massachusetts is a lost cause. Because right now they wake up and they can do away with mother and father on birth certificates and nothing can be done. They can create new gun laws that de facto ban basically the Second Amendment and your Second Amendment rights, and there's nothing we can do about it. But it's people like you, Greg, in Worcester, who sit there and say, oh, just because he didn't bow down and support the one guy that I support, therefore he's no different than Ed Markey or Elizabeth Warren. That's just a stupid approach. So I'm going to play a speech I gave at the Lincoln Reagan dinner on May 3rd addressing this division. And I want you to forget for a minute that speech is coming from me. All right? If you don't like me or you don't care about me, that's fine. But listen to it and then tell me what part of that speech that you actually disagree with, because I don't think you can. I think if you listen to what I'm about to say, then you'll have to agree because it's pure common sense. So here is the speech. I hope you enjoy it.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces. I got to give a shout out to the Gulf of Weymouth, wherever you are. Listen, those that know me know I'm not going to have a problem being blunt and keeping it real tonight. And that's because we got a serious problem in Massachusetts. Families cannot afford homes. Young people can't move out. Retirees are forced to leave. It takes 2 or 3 jobs for some folks just to keep the lights on. And it's not just about bad policy. It's a betrayal of what Massachusetts represents. We're the cradle of liberty, man. The birthplace of freedom and the American Revolution. A place where someone like me, born into poverty, surrounded by drugs and violence, could still achieve the American dream. But we can't fix it because we don't win. Every statewide and federal office in Massachusetts occupied by far left radicals. Radicals who favor illegal migrants over combat vets. A governor who spends billions on these illegals but says there's no money to save a hospital for the folks who've been here all their lives. I'm telling you, these people have lost the plot. They're trying to ban plastic grocery bags at a time when people can't afford the groceries in the bags, or electric cars on workers who can't afford a charging station or the time to wait for one as they sit in traffic on the pike because the T's a mess. And what's their solution? Raise taxes, millionaire's tax, candy tax, prescription tax. Have you heard about the surcharge on the car tax? That's right, they're taxing taxes now. But potholes aren't fixed, rents aren't coming down. And in education, today our kids face social emotional learning. Now I got to admit, it sounds kind of nice, but how about just teach math, reading, and science? Healthcare? A pregnant woman living in parts of central Massachusetts has to drive 40 minutes to give birth. A fisherman in Gloucester waits months for an appointment, but premiums soar. And energy policy? My God, they shut down nuclear, ban new gas pipelines, and force alternative energy mandates that are crushing working people and preventing affordable housing in the middle of an affordable housing crisis. I'm telling you, these people, they preach green and fly private. And they're so arrogant because they've been in charge so long, they won't allow an audit that 72% of the voters demanded be the law. That's not democracy. That's one-party rule giving the middle finger to the people they represent. And talk about arrogance. 80-year-old Ed Markey running again. Look, I'm not a young man by any standard, but when Ed Markey first went to Washington, D.C., I was 9. The Red Sox were cursed, and tickets were $1.25 at Fenway. This guy has been in Washington so long, he was actually there when Democrats were against foreign wars, fought for free speech, and even waved American flags. This guy preaches the Green New Deal, votes against border security every time, and cheers biological men competing against women just to score points with the woke elite. That's not leadership, that's a disgrace. But the more important, that's them. The most important question here tonight is, who are we? We're the party of Lincoln and Reagan, the namesake of tonight's dinner. We must be a voice for the forgotten, a party of common sense and opportunity. You know, my daughters asked me, Dad, why? Why a Republican? I said the answer is written in history, beginning with a Republican by the name of Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves, shattering the chains of bondage and oppression. It was Calvin Coolidge, a Massachusetts Republican, who stood up in the 1920s, demanding federal laws to stop lynchings after the Tulsa Massacre. It was Teddy Roosevelt who bust the trust, taking on oil barons and railroad tycoons so small businesses could thrive. Republicans drove the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and the 1964 Act passed with more GOP votes than Democrats. It was Dwight Eisenhower who sent the 101st Airborne to Little Rock to open schools for black kids. And it was Ronald Reagan who gave amnesty to 3 million immigrants, bringing them out from the shadows long before the Democrats overwhelmed this country with their border chaos, making a gesture like that today impossible. Republicans standing for the forgotten. And it was the forgotten that helped President Trump win. Massachusetts, we must learn from that election. Massachusetts is the second best state President Trump improved over 2020. You want to know why that is? Because of forgotten voters, like the ones in Fall River. Isn't that right, Sheriff Tom? But here's the hard truth, people. We don't have a seat at the table. We don't have a seat at the table. You want to know why? Because we tear each other apart. MAGA versus rhinos, purists versus pragmatists, perfect over good. Infighting is a luxury we just don't have in Massachusetts, because while we argue over who's conservative enough, Democrats win. Now, I'm not talking about primary battles. I'm not talking about primary battles. That's healthy. That's going to happen. Heck, We might see a preview here tonight, okay? But we have to come together. Listen, we agree on more than we disagree. We believe in lower taxes so working families can keep more of what they earn. We believe in less government overreach so small businesses can thrive and parents can raise their kids their way. We believe in law and order, school choice, innovation, in a country where hard work still matters. That's not a MAGA platform. That's not a Rhino platform. That's an American platform. And that's how we win. That's how we win. We got to knock on every single door, not just the folks who agree with us. Listen to the mom worried about rent, the dad fed up with energy prices, the worker tired of seeing his job leave the state. People are not looking for ideology. They're looking for solutions, and we have them. Tax relief, deregulation, school choice, common sense energy policy, innovation, real economic growth. We just got to stop bickering long enough, deliver that message, and we win. Massachusetts is not a lost cause. It's not too blue to save. We win by solving problems for regular people, and together, united, we can make Massachusetts affordable again. Thank you. God bless everyone in here.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth. I'm John Deaton. Listen, I told you when I started this show that there were going to be times when I would say positive things about President Trump or his initiatives, and there would be times when I would give you the hard truth, and if I disagreed with those initiatives or plans, I would call that out. And I think conservatives out there have to distinguish between when you call something out that President Trump may be behind, that violates your conservative principles. Are you going to not call it out? You know, you have to decide, are you a conservative, Republican, or are you just a Trump supporter? And I will continue to give President Trump credit. For example, the border security. He's reduced illegal crossings by 98%. That is fantastic. The southern border has never been more secure. Many of you who voted for President Trump, that was the number one issue because we know it's bankrupting Massachusetts. So he deserves credit. Biden was full of crap when he said that he needed a piece of paper from Congress in order to secure the border. Okay, but there are going to be times when you don't support President Trump's plans or initiatives if they go against fundamental conservatism. Now, we talked about the big, beautiful bill. That's one issue. If the bill increases the deficit by $5 trillion, I would not support it. I have a 6-year-old. I am absolutely terrified for my 6-year-old and my 25-year-old and my 23-year-old. We are robbing them of their future prosperity because we are becoming slaves to debt. The system of government is debt slavery. Even Elon Musk is calling this stuff out now. And that doesn't mean that, oh, you can't just dismiss what I'm saying. Oh, he's a never Trumper, so I'm not going to pay attention to what he says. That's nonsense. You're smarter than that. So listen, an executive order came out that's not getting talked about enough. And we got to talk about it. And that's the executive order where President Trump is creating, and he's using the company Palantir to create a centralized federal database that mandates every federal agency to share unclassified information with all other agencies. And he tasked this company called Palantir to be the primary vendor to the government. Now, Palantir was co-founded by Peter Thiel, okay, who has been partners with Elon Musk. And I think it came about through the Doge initiative because it's a process where they're like, oh, we got to come up with a way that helps eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. We also need something to help with deportations and finding where these illegal immigrants are. And that's all fine. Those are great goals to have. But this Palantir Corporation, this company, they have software that uses AI. And we're talking about now a centralized database that has every American who's living here profiled in it. And we're going to talk about that. Now, they're using this executive order in Palantir to make all the agencies cooperate because they want to basically eliminate information silos and they want to combat fraud, waste, and abuse. So Palantir is going to implement this executive order through their software platforms called Foundry and Gotham. I got to tell you, just the titles alone, Foundry, the Foundry, Gotham, sounds like something I don't want to be a part of, if you want me to be honest. But basically, every agency, we're talking about the IRS, Department of Homeland Security, Social Security Administration, every agency is going to share all personal sensitive information of Americans, and they're going to be able to cross-reference this information in real time using artificial intelligence. So anything you do can be used. We're talking about credit card information also being gathered. And this Foundry application, it organizes and analyzes and cross-references, for example, your immigration status, all your medical records, student loan debt, basically detailed citizen profiles of everyone in America. Listen, that sounds a lot like Big Brother to me. I would encourage you to pick up George Orwell's 1984 and review it, because this stuff is scary, okay? You're going to be able, and they're saying, well, we need to use it for law enforcement. It will enhance law enforcement. We'll be able to find illegal migrants from their immediate location when they use their phone apps or their credit cards or they book a train, okay? And so that's some scary stuff. All these agencies sharing all their information, creating a citizen profile. That Gotham program from Palantir basically works with the CIA. Palantir, many believe, was created in part by the CIA. And so you're talking about the CIA, military, FBI. It is basically unprecedented tracking. So imagine when you're like watching movies like Mission Impossible and you see them immediately tracking people where they are at real time using the cameras and all that. That's where we're headed, right? There's some serious risk here. We're talking about government overreach, invasion of privacy, things that we've got to be concerned about as Americans. I mean, I got to tell you something. I mean, listen, we know that at the same time that President Trump is talking about the weaponization of the agencies, and we have witnessed that, you have to understand President Trump will not always be in office. So if you support President Trump, you have to realize the man is in his 80s. This is his last term. He can't run again. And at some point in time, there's going to be another president, and that president could be a Democrat. That president could be, someone who's very left the way you think, left of the way you think, but not in a little way, in a big way. I mean, we've seen situations where federal agencies target Americans. Do you remember how the IRS was targeting members of the Tea Party? And all of a sudden, members of the Tea Party, conservatives, were getting audits by the IRS, much more disproportionate to the regular population. I mean, if you have a business and you're engaging with the Securities Exchange Commission or the Commodities Futures Trade Commission or the EPA or every other Department of Education, we could go on and on. They're going to build this database that basically has your name right on a thumb drive, everything we know about you, how you donate to entities. Remember when I said that when Elizabeth Warren wanted to ban Bitcoin because she supported a central bank digital currency that the Federal Reserve would issue, and they'd be able to control your money. Well, this is the similar kind of threat, basically, because now they will be able to track everything you do in your life. That is not the America that I want to live in. And so, but there'll be people like me who call this out, and then they'll be discredited because, oh, he's just a rhino, or he's just another never Trumper, and because Trump's behind it. Listen, Trump can make mistakes. The man is human, but they can misuse this. Okay, your firearm purchases. Think about that, how you spend your money, your political donations, your life in a click. We're going to click on to John Deaton, and now we're going to have all this profile on everything John Deaton does, every app that he's downloaded on his phone. Okay, that's what we're talking about. That's not the America that I want to live in. That is this executive order and implementing what President Trump is having Palantir implement. It may have good intentions, don't get me wrong, but the path to hell was paved with good intentions. And the Patriot Act, it had good intentions, right? We're talking about 9/11, we're talking about terrorism, but look how abusive it can be. Conservatives believe in less federal government. That is a core principle of conservatism, right? You believe that the federal government should stay out of your life as much as possible, that the federal government should be lean and small as much as possible. So I don't want to give the federal government more power over my life. I don't want to give them an ability to surveil me any more than they already do. So I am completely, wholeheartedly, 100% against Palantir and the centralized database where all these federal agencies are going to coordinate, and they're using artificial intelligence to do it. I don't want a profile. I don't want the federal government to know anything about me. I want to pay my taxes and be left alone. And I don't want them having a file on me or my family, my children, or anyone else. And I don't want them having a file on you. It's not the America that I want to live in. And so, I'd encourage you to look into it. If you don't agree with it, after you look into it, contact your congressman, contact your senator, express your discontent for this, because this is a real threat to American freedom as far as I'm concerned. The Hard Truth is paid for by the Deaton Law Firm. I've been representing mesothelioma and lung cancer victims for 23 years across the Commonwealth. If you or a loved one been diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer and were exposed to asbestos, you contact me at the Deaton Law Firm. That's DeatonLawFirm.com. You can also reach me here at this show at the HardTruthShow.com. That's John at HardTruthShow.com. John at HardTruthShow.com.
You're listening to The Hard Truth with John Deaton. John Deaton is a Marine veteran, lawyer, and best-selling author who stared down poverty, survived street violence, and beat cancer to fight another day. From the streets to the courtroom, Deaton has taken on corporate greed and fought against government fraud and overreach. Always for the little guy, a proud father of 3 girls, Deaton brings you the raw, unfiltered truth that hits hard and holds nothing back. Join us as we dive into his journey, his vision, and what he hopes to bring to the people of Massachusetts.